questions, or of course unmute and ask your questions at will. Thanks, guys.
All right, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So my name's Austin McCALL, and this is Tripp. We're with Harper General Contractors. We're going to be talking with you this morning about pre-construction and estimating. Next slide. So just to give you guys a little introduction on us and the company. So like I said, we work with Harper General Contractors. It's founded back in 1950. We're headquartered in Greenville, South Carolina. We have a few satellite offices in Asheville, Charlotte, Conway, and Spartanburg. We kind of serve the North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Tennessee areas, and we work in a variety of different markets. Probably our main markets, we spend a lot of time in education, that being K through 12 and higher ed, and industrial type work, being big box projects, industrial warehouses, things of that nature. Average project size are probably somewhere around 2 to 12 million, with capabilities over 60. And then speaking individually, so like I said, I'm Austin McCALL. I graduated from Clemson back in 2016 with a degree in civil. I've been in the construction industry since early 2017. Started out with about 3 years at J. Davis Construction, and then came over to Harper in 2020. I spent the first 4 years of my career as an APM and project manager, and then I just recently switched over to estimating about a year ago. And so within Harper, I'm more on the commercial side of the estimating team, and I will turn it over to Tripp for his intro.
How's it going? Tripp Ross. I'm an estimator here. I graduated from Clemson in 2016 in environmental engineering. I went to work for J. Davis for a few years in estimating. Stayed there for about 3 years, so I came over to Harper in 2019 as an estimator here as well. I do all the industrial big tilt boxes and all the upfits for those. So.
All right, so what we'll be talking about today are a few different topics on how it relates to our pre-construction and estimating process. We're going to be working through project workflow, and specifically, we're going to kind of work through a real life example that we've had on our plate recently. We're also going to be talking about today's market, the challenges that come with today's market, the technology that we use in estimating, and then we'll open it up for discussion and questions at the end. So jumping in to the project life cycle in pre-construction. So basically starting out, so from start to finish, usually a senior estimator, pre-con manager will assign an estimator to a job. This is when the job comes through the door. At Harper, the majority of our work is RCM at risk contracts. Just to, I guess, briefly expand on that. So with CMAR, typically there's an RFP and an interview process where our company executives, a pre-construction manager, and kind of the anticipated project team will go to an interview. Usually design is very conceptual at this point. They'll give a rough order of magnitude, talk about the project team and their resumes, discuss their idea for the approach and logistics of the project. And this, like I said, this would basically be an interview process with several different general contractors. Following the interviews, that's when a general contractor will be selected, hopefully being Harper, and that's when this would come through the door and get put on our plate as estimators. So next step in the project life cycle. So this is when project documents are received from the design team. This is when basically the ball shifts from the pre-con manager to the estimator. And next slide. So typically, project document wise, when I'm referencing that, that's typically going to be your drawings and specifications. This set you see on the screen is, it's actually, since this was a schematic design, it was a small set of drawings and some MEP and structural design narratives. This is, I didn't mention the project that we're going to be working through today, but if you guys are, I guess, familiar with the Greenville area, there's some news released this week with the Peace Center. We're fortunate enough to be, the project the general contractor on that job with the Peace Center. So it's a very cool project to be involved with. We're specifically going to be talking about the Coach Factory music venue. So those project documents come through the door. At that point, we typically do a quick internal page turn to get acquainted with the scope of work, brief, kind of get a broad overview of the project, identify all the associated trades that are going to be needed for the project, and then we're going to start selecting the appropriate trade partners for the project. Essentially, I mean, this is an important part because you do want to make sure that these trade partners were selected. They have this type of experience. They have the ability, manpower, and capacity to take on this type of work. So you don't want to throw the wrong guys in the mix, or you're kind of setting yourself up for failure on the project. So next step, once the trade partners are selected, we have a broad understanding of the project. We've got the solicitation of bids task. What this is going to be, we basically use a software called I Square Foot. This is basically our contact list for trade partners. We send out invitations through I Square Foot, and it goes to all of these trade partners that we've identified for the project. I mean, it's very helpful software. You can identify trade partners, within proximity to the project location. You can sort them by trades to make sure you've got coverage in all of the different trade areas. So it's very helpful for us, but it's essentially our contact list. This is a screenshot of the Coach Factory music venue dashboard in I Square Foot. So once that bid invite sent out electronically through this software, we typically try to follow up by phone to make sure that invitation was received, and just gauge interest from each and every one of the trade partners in the project. When we send out this invite, one of the helpful things with it is it actually has a simple click button that they can respond and either accept the invite and let us know they're interested, or reject it if they don't have the capability to take it on. Unfortunately, you'd be surprised at how many of them don't take advantage of this feature, which is why we have to make a lot of phone calls to make sure we're getting coverage. But throughout this process, through our conversations and responses that we receive, this is kind of our tool to track our anticipated coverage for pricing. You can see that with our kind of the green, red, and yellow bars on the right-hand side of the screenshot. So coverage-wise, just speaking to that, we typically try to get at least 3 bids for each trade. This is beneficial for a number of reasons. It helps confirm that the owner and client is receiving the best pricing available, and it also helps us confirm pricing and scope by comparing apples to apples with the different trade partners within that trade. So next step, we've sent out the invitations. We're tracking, making sure we're getting coverage on all the different trades. So now it's time for us as estimators to really dig into the project. This is when we do our internal quantity takeoff and really start diving deep into the details and learning all of the ins and outs of the project. I guess another item to note here, as you're kind of working through these drawings, I think it's helpful as estimators to kind of build it in your head as you go. It just helps you kind of think about logistics and how you're going to approach the project. And it's usually going to help identify maybe some of the gray areas that aren't quite as defined in the drawings and documents. So this is a screenshot of this is the flooring takeoff for the Coach Factory. We use a software called Destiny Estimator by Beck Technologies. It makes our lives a lot easier. It's basically a click of a button, and it automatically calculates your quantities for you. You can change units, rates, and at the click of a button, it can essentially develop our rough estimate for us. Next slide. So after we've really dived into the details and learned the project, done our quantity takeoff, we're now going to try and meet with, or we're going to develop a preliminary project schedule. Typically, At this point, we try to get our operations team involved. Tripp and I mean, we're estimators. We can probably take a good guess and get close on project schedules, but it really helps to get project managers, senior project managers, and some of these guys really have a lot of field experience involved at this point, to help fine tune it, and maybe identify any items that we're not seeing schedule wise. Another item with this helps. This is a big key in developing our general conditions. It helps us define what we think overall duration wise the project's going to take. And then it also at this time, we usually start talking site logistics with the ops team. So it also helps identify maybe any items that we need to include in general conditions that might be falling through the cracks. So this is a screenshot of a typical master schedule for the Peace Center. We do usually we do a more detailed schedule for that's project specific. This master schedule, this is actually what gets presented to the owner. It's a great way for us to kind of track how we are through all basically areas of the process, pre-construction design, procurement, and then the actual construction itself. A big item that we're going to hit on here shortly are challenges today. So this is a great way for us to track long lead items and make sure that that we're tracking as it relates to the construction schedule, because more times than not, that's driving the start dates. And that in turn is what's going to be communicated to the owner. And just to quickly speak to the schedule itself. So this is, we use Microsoft Project for scheduling. I'm sure you guys probably use it some in school too. But it seems to be the best scheduling software, and it's very helpful. So now that we have kind of covered all of our bases with quantity takeoff and working through GCs and schedule, it's time to really build out the estimate. This is when we're adding all of the different line items, essentially that we're going to need for the entire project. And this step essentially creates our checklist for the following step. This is a screenshot of the estimate from Coach Factory. Again, kind of working from left to right. It shows each description of every item that we've taken off or identified in the project, quantities, units, unit rates, etc. Really, you can break it down however you need to. Another item to note here is this is, we automatically, it automatically calculates any fees, contingencies, taxes for wherever the project's located and whatever those rates are that we've set for the project, depending on how you classify each of the different costs. So moving on, so the next step, at this point, we would be at our bid due date. Typically, we will give trade partners about 3 weeks or so from when we send out the invitation. At this point, we've received all the bids from trade partners, and this is when we begin to evaluate the bids and define scope gaps. To do this, we use a tool called a bid tab. Some of you may have heard of that before. We've got an example on the next slide, but essentially this helps us take each of the different trades and compare them apples to apples. This really helps you identify any scope gap areas or any questions that you need to return to the trade partners. Obviously, if somebody's way low, that should be a red flag for you to at least make sure that you're asking all the right questions to make sure the coverage is maintained.
We actually build these out using our takeoff. So we do the takeoff in our Destiny estimator, and then we send all the quantities to the estimate, and then it actually prints out the estimate, and we can save this Excel file, and then we can make all the changes to it. So it really actually helps to do the takeoff before we start doing these. That way you can see that we have actual quantities on there from our takeoff.
Okay, so moving on. So at this point, we've worked through the bid tabs. all the trade partners should be apples to apples at this point. So we've got our winning numbers for each of the trades. So we're going to start plugging all these values, finalizing the estimate, and creating our deliverable package, which will be going to the owner and design team. This is what you're seeing is a couple of screenshots of what that deliverable package would typically look like. Essentially, it's going to have all of the information that we have covered throughout this entire process. It's, trust me and Tripp didn't create this. We have a marketing team that does a great job creating this stuff. But you basically take out all of the information that you obtained throughout the life of the pre-construction process, put it into a package to basically show off all of your hard work. Typically with the deliverable, that's going to include an executive summary, which is just a broad overview of the project, calling out some highlights and big schedule milestones. You're going to have a schedule of values, which you see in the middle of the screen. It's going to break down the project cost by trade. It's going to include clarification for qualifications, which you see on the right-hand side. This is going to be a long Word document that really details what's included, what's excluded, and really clarifying any materials or products that are included in our pricing. It's also going to include a list of the design information that the design team included for us, our project schedule that we worked on, and then any value engineering options and ideas that we have for the project. So at this point, you've got your package ready to go, and so it's time to meet and present and review with the owner and design team. At this point, hopefully you're still falling within all the parameters that the owner has provided for you. This is when you'll determine your next path forward, whether that means design is going to proceed on and develop further, whether value engineering is needed and we need to really dial in the budget moving forward, or if it's a GMP, you might be ready to roll with a contract. So overall, I'd say that this gets you from start to finish in the pre-construction life cycle. I'd say this typically for us takes 4 to 6 weeks or so per project. And, that would wrap us up with project workflow. So we're going to move on to today's market.
So today's market, I'm sure a lot of y'all know the last 2 years have been a little crazy for us, dealing with the material escalations and then the supply chain delays. Speaking on the material escalations across the board, we've heard from a couple of experts in the construction industry that market prices have increased at a rate of between 15 and 17% per year over the last 2 years. That includes structural steel, which has been about 15% per quarter. Joist and deck over the last 2 years, we've seen that go up 300%. Roofing, you can see, has been about 140%. Glass and glazing has been 60%. And I focus on the big box jobs, the tilt jobs. We use a lot of concrete and rebar, and we've seen that go up about 5% every 6 months for concrete, and rebar's gone up about $60 a ton every 6 months. So obviously that can really play into your pricing and whether or not you can hold pricing from your last round. Not to go along with that, we've got a lot of supply chain delays where we haven't been able to get material. So what Austin was saying back when he was mentioning the project schedules, we like to try to follow and keep up with and track these certain materials and items, because if you don't have these accounted for, your schedule really doesn't mean a whole lot, and then you can also pass that information along to your owner. So it's really important to keep track of those.
Right. And I'll chime in here and say, when it comes to supply chain, so obviously some of the items that we've got listed here are almost roofing at one point is a year out. Switchgear and electrical panels 50 weeks out. Aluminum storefront doors 30 weeks. So those are the items that when you're communicating with the owner schedule, some of these items have to be released early to maintain the schedule. that you've identified and that the owner wants. So that kind of segues us into the next agenda item, which is challenges.
So with these, the market that is today, obviously it brings a lot of challenges on the supply chain is bringing a lot of challenges on being able to hold quotes. And it's the manufacturers are not able to hold their pricing to their subcontractors, who in turn are not able to hold their pricing to us. So, it's one of the things that we get a quote from a subcontractor, and from a roofing, you can see on the screen there, it's a non-guaranteed price. So, it's kind of scary for us going into a bid job or something like that, where we've got a number that says, well, we can't guarantee the price. Same thing goes with glass. You see another one there. It says glass pricing cannot be protected. And steel prices are only being able to be held for 5 days. So that really kind of makes us a little wary of being able to use these numbers and feel good about them. We also have been dealing with material procurement. Obviously, the long lead times have been leading to the supply chain delays. So that obviously affects the owner expectations, because we've got numbers that we give them, and then we go and do more design from SD to CD to GMP, and we aren't able to stick to our numbers because obviously the manufacturers are passing along increases that get passed along to us. So we've had some very difficult conversations with owners that we've kind of gotten used to, unfortunately, but we're working through it, and it's just the way the market is. I think it's pretty well across the country. So I know we're not alone in this, but it's been definitely tough to deal with.
So with what Tripp just spoke to, I mean, these are obviously big issues when it comes to budget and schedule, which are two of the three main items that owners and clients are going to be concerned with. It's typically budget, schedule, and quality. So the question is, how do you manage these challenges? What we've kind of had to do is we basically just had to adjust to work with the market. I'd say within the past 2 years, we've had to actually start including material escalation allowances in our estimates in the budgets. What that does, it's essentially a pot of money that is included in the budget, and it's specifically set aside to address items like quote expiration and any manufacturer increases that are passed down the line to the trade partners, which then get in turn passed to us and the owner. So what this does with the material escalation allowance, usually if design is more on the conceptual or schematic phase, which is earlier on in the project, that allowance will be greater. And as we kind of get closer and closer to construction, we will dial that back. And then we'll typically still hold a pot of money as we work through construction. What this is basically protection, not only for us, but it's also for the owner. And then it also helps out with our trade partners as well. Next item is early release packages. This kind of speaks to the schedule and long lead times. Specifically, we were talking about Coach Factory earlier. Steel right now, I believe it's 24, 26 weeks. So that's one item. The owner's ready to go on the Coach Factory. So that's one thing that we've got to release probably within the next few weeks to keep the current construction schedule that we're anticipating. And so what that does, that's built in 24 weeks for that lead time to get the steel on site when we need it. The problem with some of these early release packages, and I'll actually speak to another one, a separate project at the Peace Center, electrical gears. We talked 50 weeks for that. That would be a big deal, a big holdup for the project if that doesn't get released. But the challenge with releasing these items early is once they're released, that means design can't really be changed after you're releasing these materials. So it kind of handcuffs the design team a little more, but it helps. It has to be done to maintain a project schedule in the different scenarios. Lastly, this is more of an operations item. This is once it's out of our hands as estimators. But expeditious buyout, obviously Tripp spoke to how quickly quotes are expiring nowadays. It's almost impossible to receive a quote and have it bought out within 5 days. But you can, as soon as it's turned over to the operations team for construction, best practice on their end is to really get letters of intent and subcontracts in all the trade partners' hands as soon as possible, because that lets them lock in pricing where they can, which then in turn helps protect us and the owner once again from these different escalations that we're seeing.
And one of the good things about Harper is we have a really good relationship with our trade partner base. And so the majority of the people that we work with do actually work with us on that pricing. So that expeditious buyout actually works out, so we can get it bought out. But usually we have a good enough relationship that it doesn't become a huge issue for us.
Okay, so next item on the agenda is technology.
These are the items that these are the technology that we use as estimators every day. Austin mentioned that we use Destiny Estimator by Beck Technology. That's where we do our quantity takeoffs. That's where we build the estimate. That's where we produce our schedule of values. Bluebeam is a PDF editor. It's actually really cool tool. Pretty important. You can actually do takeoff in there as well. It's obviously not as clean as the estimator is, but you can do quantity takeoff in that, and you can mark up PDFs and edit them. I square foot is how we send out our bids to trade partners and solicit those bids. Procore is more of an operations tool, but we use it more for project documents once we get a project. And then Microsoft Project is obviously for scheduling. And one thing that's been pretty important coming into estimating and pre-construction is actually 3D modeling. And you can see below that's a screenshot of a model that I was using for a project for the Greenville Country Club. It's actually a really neat tool once it's built out correctly. It's more of a newer technology for us. But I mean, you can click on a piece of glass and then you can say select all, and you can have your quantity takeoff for all the glass in the whole project or just for the outside wall, or you can count walls, doors, everything else. So it's really a great tool for an estimator to use, and I hope it becomes even bigger for us.
So I'm going to interject for just a moment on two things. We're excited to have welcomed Procore as a corporate partner. So all of our students will have in-depth knowledge with Procore before they leave our program. And then yesterday, we were actually very fortunate to have Tim Lewis from Harper Corp to speak at our construction symposium, which was extremely well received. Not all of our students were able to attend in person, so we have recorded the whole symposium and we are waiting for the edits. And once those recordings become available, we'll make sure to share them to the group, because BIM is extremely interesting. I thoroughly enjoyed that portion yesterday. So thank you guys, and thank Tim again for his time and presenting that for us yesterday.
Absolutely.
Yes, and as an estimator, right now, we've really only, I feel like, scratched the surface of what we can actually do with BIM and 3D modeling. So I think there's a lot that we don't really get our hands on yet, but I think it's a very important tool and will be a very important tool in the future.
Okay, so that brings us to our last item, which is discussion. So at this point, we'll open it up. If you guys have any questions about what we've talked about, anything that we didn't talk about, really anything and everything. We'd just like to open it up to you guys and see if you have anything for us.
I have a question. When you're talking about the Peace Center, was that more of just talking about a past project, or y'all currently working with them right now?
So we're currently working with them right now. Basically, so on Tuesday, I think it was on Tuesday of this week, they had a big press release conference. They're doing some upgrades to, I think, 3 different buildings on campus. One that we talked about today is the Coach Factory. So if you're familiar with Larkins in Greenville, right along the river, it's actually in that building. they're actually going to turn that into a 3-story music venue. It's going to be open through all 3 floors, which would be a very cool project to be a part of. And I think it's going to be great for the city as well. So it is something we're currently working on, and kind of timeline wise, we're currently in the middle of design. It's in the design development phase. This is probably going to be like 2023, 24 project.
There was some discussions yesterday afternoon at the networking portion of the symposium, and they were actually referencing that project, and it sounds incredible. And I'm very excited to have that come to our Greenville community, because it's something that we've been lacking in my opinion. So that's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have a different question. Do you guys ever run into like storage issues where like the lead time is 52 weeks and then you get it at like the 30 or 40 week time? And I mean, you got to take it because you don't know when you can get it again.
Yeah, I'll speak to this a little bit. We've actually come across that in the last year, especially one of our HVAC guys. So he's actually, what he's done is he's decided that the best thing to do, and we've actually both decided, he'll actually give us an ad alternate on his pricing to buy all the equipment as soon as we get the project, store it in a Connex on his at his office, and bring it to the site whenever we need it. And it's a small dollars compared to the big picture item, but yeah, we've actually had to do that on several projects, and I think we've even talked about doing it for metal studs, and obviously you can't do that with like drywall or ACT or anything like that, but you know, items that you can buy ahead of time and just keep on site is definitely a way to cut any potential escalations that you might see. So yeah, that's a good question.
I have a quick question. So with your guys' sub with the I square foot, do you guys see like your subcontractors using that and actually like benefiting from that? Because I did pre-con for a different company this summer, and we just kind of sent it out in like an email format, and then I was having to call or email them like a week or 2 weeks before the bids were due. Like, do you guys see that software actually being utilized very well by the subcontractors, and they're actually responding and receiving the bids and that kind of thing?
I'll say really quickly, yes and no. We have some issues because we have some people that say, I haven't gotten an email from I Square Foot since December 2020. I don't know how that happens when everybody else gets it. I don't know. Maybe it's going to their spam. Maybe it gets lost in the cloud. I don't know. But overall, I think it's a really, really good tool. It sends everything out. Like Austin mentioned, it has a button where you say, yes, I want to bid. No, I don't want to bid. They don't use it, but sometimes they do. And then you can also keep all your projects in a central location, or all of your project documents in a central location on there. If you have an addendum, you can upload it on there and it'll automatically send everybody the update with the addendum. I think it's a really good tool. I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
I do too. I would agree. Yes and no. I think what I've learned is you've got to learn your trade partners' preferences, I guess is the best way to put it too. Some of them are really technologically savvy, and it's perfect. You know, they'll get the invite, they've got the documents, no problem. You never hear from them unless they have questions. Others, like you said, you know that there's going to be issues with it. And the best way to get to them is to call them and say, hey, did you see this? And usually the answer is no, what are you talking about? And then that's when we typically send it over through email. It's really just kind of a case-by-case basis with some of those guys. But I think as we kind of move forward, I think it'll get better and better. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other
Anything
questions?
else?
Well, guys, thanks for taking the time to do this on a Friday morning. And I don't know if any other students want to ask questions. It looks like we've gone quiet. It is Friday.
Absolutely. No, we appreciate you guys having us, and hopefully we didn't put you guys to sleep today. Yeah.
Again, thank you very much for taking the time to do this. Very informative, and when you see Timothy, tell him thank you again for yesterday's presentation.
Will do.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. We
Thank y'all.
appreciate it.
And just for everyone else on the call, Harper will be at our career fair on October the 13th. So make sure that you have them on your list to stop by and speak to. They're always super excited to speak with our students. So,
Thank y'all.
all right. Well, happy Friday and go Tigers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've got a quick question real quick, for,
Thank you, guys. We'll see you soon.
I noticed on the canvas that we have two,